Hey guys, this is Ash, and in this video, we're going to talk about how to learn vocabulary in Chinese. I'm going to give you some real practical ideas on how to do that, but of course, to learn vocabulary, you also got to learn characters. So I want to give you some in-depth training on how to learn characters for free. Just click on the link in the description and get a free 1-hour training video to help you learn characters more effectively. Okay, now on to the video. Now, the goal here is that you want to learn vocab that's appropriate to your stage of learning, and you want to do that in a way where you learn it right the first time and you don't have to come back and fix things later once you've developed habits. Now, what am I talking about? So there's at least 2 stages to learning vocabulary. Stage number 1 is you haven't yet mastered the sound system of the language you're learning. Obviously, we're talking about Mandarin here, right? But if you can't look at a pinyin or whatever writing you want to look at, and that sound doesn't come out of your mouth at least 95% correctly without you having to think about it, then you have not mastered the sound system. Now, why is that important? Well, at that stage, what you want to avoid doing is learning a ton of vocab. Now, why do I say that? Because if you learn a ton of vocab before you've mastered the sound system, you're setting yourself up to have bad pronunciation, and that's going to take a long time to fix later on. Now, believe me, I know this because I myself made that exact mistake. So you definitely want to avoid that. When you're in this early stage, you haven't mastered the sound system yet. You don't want to be learning lists of vocabulary. You want to be memorizing your vocabulary by listening and repeating to sentences, preferably. That way you get a feel for how words sound in a sentence, because they sound very different from, you just look at a list, then you say it with your wrong pronunciation, and then you put it into a sentence and it changes again. So it's best to actually just learn the stuff in sentences. So find these basic sentences like, I want to go over there, I want to eat some food, I'm tired, I need to take a rest. This kind of thing you want to learn by listening and repeating. Now, you may have heard me say that before, but it's true. You really want to spend a bunch of time listening and repeating. So the next stage is once you have mastered the sound system. Now, how do you know when you've mastered the sound system? Well, basically, you can just read words off of a page and you're at least 95% correct, like 95% like a native speaker. You can use this words, you can say it in a sentence. You're not talking and thinking about, wait a minute, does that tone go up or down? Like if you're thinking about that, you definitely have not mastered the sound system. So once you have mastered the sound system, then it's okay to start learning words off a list and then stuff. Like Anki, actually, you could use in your previous stage, because in Anki you can put audio. So you would want to hear that word and repeat it instead of just seeing it and thinking in your head what the pronunciation should be. So now that you're in the stage where you've mastered the sound system, then you also want to split this stage up into some sub-stages, right? So early on, intermediate level, advanced level, these all have different needs and different requirements. So you want to do different things to master your vocabulary. Now, when you're in this early stage, you're going to want to start expanding your knowledge of common words. So if you say a word more than once a week, like say you're looking at a vocabulary list and you see 3 words, and the first word, man, I use that word every day. I definitely learn that word. If you see the next one, I see that word once a week, or I use it once a week, definitely learn that one. And then the third one, you're like, yeah, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, I'll learn that. I'll say that word, right? Don't learn that yet. You want to first get down these basic words, the ones that you use on a very regular basis, right? And so one way you could do this, actually, you don't want to do this in Chinese, but in other languages, you could say read children's books, because children's books always have more simple vocabulary. Because kids have not, they don't talk about politics, they don't talk about global warming or whatnot. What they do talk about are very simple things like running and playing and throwing and catching and stuff like that. Now, why don't you want to use Chinese children's books? Because in Chinese, we have this extra thing, Chinese characters. And in these children's books, you have tons of characters that, one, they aren't, how do I say this? They aren't used often. They're just using that one word, right? This type of animal or this type of plant, they're just using that one single solitary vocabulary word or maybe two. And so you're not getting a lot of bang for your buck. And in the early stages of your learning, you want to be getting as much bang for your buck as you can. So you don't want to go through these kids' books that have all these different like names of bugs. And the thing is, you're not even going to use these bug names. Like I lived in Taiwan 13 years, and I don't think I ever said caterpillar once. Now, if you're interested in caterpillars, or if you want to be an entomologist, obviously you have a different set of requirements. But the thing about it is, you're still going to want to put those words off until you're in advanced stage, right? So learning any language, you have two types of vocabulary you want to learn. You have the common words that everybody uses, and two, the words that you're either in your work specialty or in your personal interest that you talk about a lot. Like for me, I talk about languages a lot. So when I'm learning my advanced vocabulary, I'm learning, verb, noun, isolating language, like all this kind of vocab. Okay, so let me recap. When you're in your early stages of learning, you're going to want to get those words that you're using every day that are common, that everybody uses, right? And when you hit your intermediate stage, you want to start to expand on your vocab. So if you have words that you already know that are common, you're going to start learning synonyms of these words, i.e. words that have the same meaning, so that when you're talking, and it also helps you with your listening comprehension when you know more than one way to say a thing. So at that stage, you're going to want to start expanding upon what you know already, but you're going to be learning kind of some of the similar words. Now, and then at the same time, when you get more advanced, you're going to want to really start learning these words that are special to you. In other words, they fit into your work or into your hobbies. Like for me, I like movies. So I would learn words about movies. I do linguistics, paleography. So obviously I need to learn the vocabulary in these fields. Okay, so now I'm going to give you some tips. When you learn different languages, there's different levels of commitment involved. For instance, learning Chinese or learning Japanese is a much, much higher level of commitment for somebody who speaks a Western language like English as their native language than learning Chinese or Japanese. So for me, when I'm learning German, say, a lot of times I'll make lists with paper. So I just have a list of these words, I put them in groups, and then I also put just the German words in groups so that I can test myself. But when I'm doing Chinese or Japanese, this isn't as effective. So at this time, I'll use Anki, because the Anki cards, I can put the audio in, and it has the space repetition, so it keeps track of the ones that you need to learn better. For like a language like German or French, it could be the case that if there are words that are very difficult for me to remember, that I might put those into Anki, right? But the point is this that I'm trying to make here is that learning different languages requires different methods and different ways of practicing. So if you've learned other languages before, you may not necessarily be able to use all the techniques. I mean, you can try them, but if they're not working, then you need to do something else. So Chinese is definitely going to max out the level of effort you need. So you want to arrange your study and your ways of practicing around the language that you're learning, right? Okay, so another thing for Chinese would be, it's far easier to learn a new word that already has characters that you know than to learn a word that has, say, two characters that you don't know. I mean, we're talking about hugely different levels of effort. So when you're learning like what I did when I was learning new characters, I would learn 20 units a day, where unit means a word or a character. And I would learn usually 5 characters a day. And then the rest of the 15 units I would fill as character words that have the characters that I'm learning today, but then also the rest of the characters in those words are characters that I already know. And this keeps the level of effort down. If you try at one time to learn a ton of words that have a bunch of characters that you don't already know, you're really asking for trouble, because it's going to be very difficult. It won't be as fun, and you'll see your results just won't be nearly as good. So you're going to want to get in there and take advantage of the characters you already know. Use a program like OneLean or like get lists of words off the internet and then choose the words off the list. Don't just learn all of them. Learn the ones first that you already know the characters. Now, this is also a principle of learn new things by utilizing things that you already know. That's always a good method because it's easier to learn things that you're somewhat familiar with, right? So learning this Chinese vocabulary, pick words that you already know the characters to over words that you don't, unless you have some really good reason. But even if you had a really good reason, what I would recommend is actually going in first and learning each character in the word, and then later, like put it off a couple of days, going back and learning that word once you already know the characters. Another thing that's really good to do is learn words within a story or in some kind of meaningful context. This also lowers the burden because the brain, for one, it likes stories. Learning with stories, or even like advertising, they want you to advertise by using stories. Like, why is that? Well, because humans have been using stories, sitting around campfires telling stories for thousands and thousands of years, right? So this is just something that's ingrained in human thinking. So when you learn your vocabulary words inside of a story, they're much easier to remember than when you just pull them off of a random list. Now, if you have a list, maybe it's not random, maybe you pulled data down off the internet or something. If you want to use this list, what you can do is create your own stories or practice these vocabulary words by sitting down and writing out full sentences. Now, the danger in writing out full sentences is that you might input your own language into your sentences, right? And you definitely do not want to practice doing it wrong. The point I'm trying to make here is have a sentence that you know is correct, and then maybe you can switch out words in the sentence and then use your vocabulary words while you're switching these words out. So that way you know you're making correct sentences. Now you can find sentences on the internet. You can ask friends. You can take sentences out of books you've looked into or textbooks. For me, when I'm reading Chinese, I'm always, it's just any language actually, but I'm always looking for sentences. I like sentences that I like. It's like, oh wow, they really express that idea, and I'll make markings in my book. So that I can come back and find that sentence later. Okay, and another thing is using mnemonics is actually really effective. However, there's a danger when you're using mnemonics, and the danger is you don't want to have your mnemonic have the wrong sound. In other words, you don't want your mnemonic to influence your thinking about that word's pronunciation. You want to use a mnemonic that won't damage your pronunciation of that word. Because like I said at the beginning, the goal of this whole thing is to learn your vocabulary, do it right the first time so that you don't have to come back years later like I did and try to fix things. It's much better get your pronunciation right in the beginning. Then once you've mastered the sound system, go back and, start learning a lot of words. But before you master the sound system, you want to stick with learning sentences by listening and repeating. Then once you've done that and you're going in and you're learning all your words, at that point, when you're in your early stages, you want to stick with these basic vocabulary items that we all use every day. Once you move into the intermediate, then you want to start learning synonyms of these words that are basic, because, nobody just knows. When I say nobody, native speakers don't know just one word that has one meaning. They usually know 5 words, right? So when they talk, they're not always going to use that word, and you're going to need to expand your vocab so that you're learning these, you know several words for that one meaning. Okay, once you're past your intermediate stage, that's when you're getting into your more advanced. You're really going to start wanting to work on vocabulary that's important to you. In other words, vocabulary that you might need in your job, vocabulary that your, wife or husband's family, maybe they go to Maine every summer and they like talking about the leaves or whatnot. So you need to go learn that specialized vocabulary. And then once you really get into learning vocab, you always want to be thinking about ways of being more effective. Pay attention to how you learn, pay attention to what works, maybe even keep a note. Like I keep notebooks I do experiments, and you definitely want to do experiments because, you know, you might see a video on the internet and they tell you to do it one way, and then you try it, it doesn't work for you. It's fine. Well, then start thinking about what is it about this thing that doesn't work, and then, you know, figure out how to fix it to where it works for you. So that was how we learn vocabulary. And please check out the link in the description where we teach you how to learn Chinese characters more effectively. And it's totally free and super practical. Okay, I'm Master Outlier. See ya.